Welcome back to the Million Dollar Landscaper Podcast. Today, I'm excited to bring on some guests here. Today, we have Derek and Kelly of Hailu. They are a agency that helps you get VAs and get your business set up to be able to take on a VA service. And today, we're going to talk a little bit about what VAs are, how they can help your business. So, Derek, Kelly, appreciate you guys being on the show today.
Thank you. Thanks for having us, Scott.
So, Derek and Kelly, would you guys mind just kind of sharing a little bit of what Hailu is and really how it came to be?
Yeah, absolutely. So Hailu is there's a few different ways to describe what we do, but ultimately what we're doing is outsourcing. So we are acquiring talent in other countries, and then we're helping that talent find homes here in the United States, and helping businesses in the United States acquire talent globally.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. And when you say talent, what kind of talent are we talking about? What are we bringing on?
Yeah, so any talent that can do their job remotely.
Okay.
So essentially, what a virtual assistant is somebody who is a remote worker that is doing any task that can be done remotely. And typically, they are in another country where there's advantages with the exchange rate.
Mhm. Okay. And mind me asking, how did you guys kind of get started in bringing on the VAs? How did that come to be?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a long story behind this, but essentially, we own a moving company, so we're in the service industry, and we've had our ups and downs just like everybody else. I bootstrapped the company. I started it myself. Started renting trucks in a small town in Ottawa, Kansas, and we ended up hitting a point during COVID where we had rapid expansion. So we had some years where everything was great. I mean, we were able to really take advantage of the supply chain issue, the labor wage inflation, and so we really positioned ourselves well to grow, and we grew 863% in 3 years. So we were in the Inc. 5000 3 years in a row. Everything was really good, and speed of growth is it seems great, but it's also a danger zone.
Mhm.
Just like driving a car really fast. It's really fun at the time until there's an accident. So we hit a period of time where we expanded into Denver. So we expanded our location. Kelly and I actually moved to Denver to start this other location. We lived there for about 8 months while we were building that up. And then we, reinvested. So, with our success, we are like, hey, this is great. Let's continue to reinvest, and we'll see this continuous growth, which wasn't realistic, obviously. But one of the things that we invested in was software. And we, unfortunately, it did not work out, and it was a major loss for us. We lost about 500K on software development. So, it was a lesson learned. And then what ended up happening was, we hit this perfect storm with the market where interest rates started to rise. And because what we do is, mainly residential moving, the number of housing transactions just plummeted because of the rate at which those interest rates were going up. And so we hit a cash flow issue that was like of epic proportions for us. And really, Hailu was born out of that problem of, hey, what are we going to do to save this company right now in this situation? We have way too much overhead, and we still need to, we want to maintain our systems and processes because a lot of those are risk mitigation processes. So we're like, what are we gonna, what are we gonna do about this? And so that's where we realize the power of leveraging outsourced talent, and that's kind of how Hailu was born.
That's awesome. And us as landscapers, we can kind of really relate to even a moving business because they're a service business. We still provide some kind of service, some type of help to a client. So this is something that we can easily kind of relate to on here on this. Um, when you started looking into having VAs into your moving company, were you just kind of going online and just kind of just winging it, or did you how did this kind of come to be with getting the VAs and all that?
Yeah, no, I did a ton of research. I had tried services in the past that were not successful, mainly because of language barrier, and then managing remote talent is not easy. And obviously, we've learned a lot, and businesses have evolved during COVID on how to better operate a remote team. So essentially, like when we first started looking, we were very skeptical, and there was some worry there, but yeah, we did a ton of research, and we actually hired our first VA, who is now the operations manager and co-founder of Halu. So he's probably a gem. Very. I don't think we're going to be able to replicate Ramon. He is like, we call him Speedy. He's in every fixing every problem that occurs within seconds. That's why we call him that. But yeah, I mean, we got our first VA, and then we took a strategy of you know how are we going to either elevate our key players by allowing them to focus on high value activities, and then also lowering our administrative costs. So the strategy of using Ramon within our operations, we can go through exactly how we did that, if that works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that'd be good. I, I guess kind of going back to where you guys were, nervous about bringing somebody on. What were some of the things that were going through your head? What kind of made it? I know you mentioned like the language barrier and stuff like that. What other things kind of were concerned to you?
Yeah, I would say, language barrier was one that could potentially have been an issue. Also, with our location being, our primary location is in Kansas City, so Midwest, and how are we going to integrate somebody who maybe speaks English but potentially has an accent, right? How are people going to accept that? How do we maintain the homegrown company feel if we are going to utilize this type of service? So that was one fear that we had. I think the other one was maybe adaptation to time zone. Obviously, we're talking about someone who's on the complete opposite side of the world, so how are they going to integrate into our team and feel like they're a part of our team, if that's the case? And then just overall, I think it was some skepticism on how much a virtual assistant could even handle. And for us, that actually took us a very long time to figure out. We started very, very small. And quite frankly, we didn't optimize Ramon's tasks for 6 to 9 months, I would say. He was just doing very, very menial tasks here and there, nothing really set in stone. And, like Derek said, Ramon's very much a gem. He's our unicorn, I would say. And he took the initiative to actually plug himself into the company in more ways than what we had asked him to. And that's really when we learned, just how powerful virtual assistants could be. Was just seeing him start to integrate into every single department and start to learn their processes to the point where, like Derek said, we started calling him Speedy because he would get to problems before anyone else did. And this was his own initiative without us even asking. So it was amazing.
I think the other thing, just to kind of piggyback off of that, is that everyone during COVID was dealing with wage inflation, and we were dealing with a labor market that rapidly changed. And one of the things, that we noticed is that we weren't able to really acquire talent here on the ground level operationally. That, I mean, quite frankly, was grateful to be there. And it was really disheartening over the last few years. Just the hiring process was kind of eye opening. And once we hired Ramon, we realized that there are people in other countries that love the opportunity, that want the opportunity. And just his ethos of like, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to help this company be successful. I hadn't seen that for years, and it was like refreshing because it wasn't a constant, I need a raise every month, I'm asking for a raise. It was, what can I do to help? And that really encouraged us to be like, hey, how can we elevate this individual and continue to delegate more tasks to him? And so yeah, that's just something to add to what Kelly was saying.
Yeah. So I'm kind of curious. You said at first you weren't really taking advantage of the different tasks that they could do. When you first started, what kind of tasks did you have him doing, and then what kind did you add on as you kind of saw his value and what they could do?
Yeah, so he started off as my assistant personally. And as the CEO, I wear a lot of different hats and I'm kind of ADHD. So I needed some help with managing my inbox and, my calendar and kind of things like that. But then what I ultimately end up doing with my assistants is having them do something for a department, and then the department absorbs them, and then I no longer have an assistant anymore. So there's like areas in the business which are like major gaps, and I'm like, dude, go fill the gap. And once they do that, they do it so well, we find other gaps within that department. And so with Ramon, it was kind of the same story, except for it wasn't just one department, it was all the departments. He was like sniffing out problems and solving problems. And I mean, Kelly can give you some examples of like problems that he was able to solve. I mean, we had a long distance move. And yeah, go ahead and tell that story, because that's
Well, I'm going to backtrack just a little bit as far as what we were kind of sending him to do. And it was, when I say menial task, I'm talking about, hey, if a call comes in and nobody else can answer, maybe take a message, right? Like the most
yeah.
basic thing, answer it, take the message, get it to the right person. That's it. Nothing crazy. And so that's really how we started, because we were very concerned about, what was going to be able to be handled. But yes, this long distance move was actually the shining moment, I guess, where it clicked for us as far as, wow, this is actually somebody who could take on quite a bit more than what we were thinking. In the world of moving, obviously, there's a lot of things that go into it. We had a long distance move going from Denver all the way out to Virginia. It was supposed to be a downsized move. So this person only wanted to take 2 truckloads out to Virginia, didn't think it was worth it to take the rest. We had a lot of process and procedure that go into leading up to the move date, checking back in on inventory, checking back in on downsizing. Everything seemed like it was going to be fine. And we showed up on move day, and what was supposed to be a 2 truck move was still a 5 truck move. And this was in the middle of summer. So, very, very busy time of year, not very easy to just pull 3 trucks up out of nowhere and figure out how to get them not only just out of the house to somewhere local, but all the way across the country to a different state. And before anyone else could even react, Ramon had actually done a full cost breakdown of whether we should do a round trip truck or a one-way truck, what the plane tickets would cost, all the hotels, who could go, got reservations, got backup reservations, got plane tickets, had everything laid out, and just presented it in this very beautiful side-by-side comparison and said, okay, here's what we can present to the customers, and I already have everything set up just in case we need to move forward with one of them.
It's really
That's
just
awesome.
the difference between being proactive and reactive. And I feel like, you know, it's difficult to find key players that are proactive.
Mhm.
And we essentially identified that an individual in the Philippines who is making a fraction of what people in the United States make was able to be so proactive and willing to solve problems. It was mind blowing to us.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That they're awesome. Like we use them here in our $1 Million Landscaper business. I have multiple different ones, and I use them for podcast editing. I have one that helps me with my bookkeeping. I have another one that does video editing, uh, and one other one too that helps with social media. And it is amazing what they actually, like you said, they're capable of. And I didn't. Again, same situation. I didn't realize what they can actually do. And the social media one, we just started working with them, and they laid out this huge plan of everything like step by step. I'm like, holy cow, I didn't even think about that. Like that is awesome. So it is amazing what their capabilities are of things, and it just the knowledge they have is more than I don't know. I don't know why. Maybe it's naive of me, but I just didn't think they would know how to do that stuff as much as I did. I'm not saying I'm all high and mighty, but I didn't think they had that knowledge, I guess. But
yeah.
yeah, and like when I started interviewing these people, I started realizing they're going to colleges and stuff down there, and realizing how to make themselves better and how to become a better VA or whatever they're trying to specialize in. So it is amazing the talent that's out there beyond what we just kind of see in our local areas.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's mind blowing. And I think giving access to that talent is really what we want to be able to do. And not only just acquiring the talent, but you know, the hard part is managing the talent. And just like any remote staff, the question is always like, are they really doing what I'm asking them to do? Like, what are they doing right now? Like,
Yeah.
are they even working? What am I paying for? And I think that's the problem that, we've been able to solve for our clients. And we continue to add a layer of consultation on how to, fully optimize your VA talent once we place that talent. And that kind of leads into, I guess, with Ramon, I saw this huge opportunity, and I was like, hey, I want you to go to every department and I want you to create a list of every task that exists within that department. And we created a flow chart. And the flow chart basically was like, here's the department head, here's the department, here's all of the tasks. And what we realized is that the tasks that actually take up the most amount of time are typically like, I hate to use the phrase low level tasks, but a task that is repetitive and doesn't take a lot of, talent to accomplish, what I would consider a low level task. This is not a revenue generating task. This is a task that just takes up, time. It's necessary to support a function within the business, but it's a time suck. So we realized that our key players that we're paying, high salary dollars to, the majority of their time is actually going to low level tasks.
Yeah.
And so, really seeing, I'm a visual person. So I'm always like, I want a flow chart. I want to see a flow chart. And it helps me better understand like, different concepts. And so with this, I was like, whoa, okay, so what can we actually delegate to, a remote team? And, can we build a remote team to take all of these tasks away? Fast forward to today at Moving Pros, we have, 8 VAs across all departments, including a VA manager. So our team and our infrastructure is essentially built, on Halo. So, once we were able to delegate all those tasks and build out that team, I told Ramon, I said, hey, if you can accomplish this, we're going to start a business together. And and I was like, I didn't tell him we were going to start a business. I actually told him that I have a surprise if he can accomplish it. And then, once he did accomplish that, I was like, I've got an idea. We're gonna start a business, and we're gonna do this for other companies. And so, yeah, that's kind of how we started. That was the strategy. We learned a lot actually from building out that flow chart, because you can use this tool as a way to elevate your key players to be focusing on those high value activities, or essentially, the other tool is to not have to fill a role, because you can just fill that role with a VA. So, for example, I guess is somewhat disruptive, if it's not gone about in the right way, because these VAs are able to kind of audit the department, and you're able to get more insight on the department. And then some key players are willing to be elevated, and some key players are not. So we had a mixture of both. But a good example would be our general manager, Tim. He was our sales manager. His tasks for sales management were essentially outsourced, and we were able to elevate him to a general manager position and not backfill the sales manager. So that's one example of the change of infrastructure leveraging virtual assistants.
What other things, like as far as what the VAs can do? Can you give us just some examples that what landscapers can think of, like in terms of how they can use the VAs?
Yeah, so from a landscape perspective, and this is where we found that any service industry has a lot of overlap, right? And so we're able to see that in the moving side as well. One of the things is like logistics coordination, kind of like what I talked about with, obviously you guys aren't going to do long distance landscaping, but crew tracking and billables and making sure that all of that is correct with your customers, right? And that your timesheets are accurate. These are all things that VAs can help with. On the sales side of things, again, we talked about kind of depending on where you are and maintaining your homegrown feel with your clients. You probably wouldn't want to have a virtual assistant be on the front end of sales, but what they can do is very much be on the back end of sales, right? Where they're monitoring quality, making sure that everything's going well there. They can also help put together estimates behind the scenes, helping with follow-ups, texting customers, alerting customers of any changes to the day of schedules, things of that nature. You mentioned for $1 million landscaper, you have someone doing bookkeeping. So there's also the financial aspect. AR and AP are things that virtual assistants can help with. Vendor management is another one. That's something that we struggle with in transportation, just with various vendors and billing not going well with them or getting incorrect invoices. So really saving you dollars on the back end, making sure that the invoices you're getting are accurate and you're not paying out to some of your vendors with extra charges that you shouldn't be getting charged. So those are things they can help with as well. Depending on comfortability on your side as well with clients, customer service is another great one, right? Our entire customer service team is all virtual assistants. They handle everything from ticket intake all the way to full resolution. And so, they also helped structure our process for that. We had a structure, and plugging them into that, they were finding gaps here and there and filling those gaps and figuring out, hey, what is a better process for this? What's our escalation rate? Like all these things, building out actually our entire customer service like dashboard and backend system. That was all completed by VAs, which for me, I would have never thought that we would do that 2 years ago and just hand it over and say, hey, here's the problem, solve it, and we'll take a look at it and review it once you guys are done. So they took that whole thing and built the entire thing out. It was amazing.
Yeah, that is awesome. We try to, just as, at least from myself and the people I talk to as business owners, we try to be the firefighter. We try to go in there and take care of all these little issues. But if you can hand this stuff off, that is awesome to not have to worry about those kind of issues and just let somebody else deal with it. But you're mentioning some of the different tasks that we can hand off, and just from my experience with a lot of landscapers, these are the little tasks that we just kind of either put off because we're so busy doing things and dealing with customers and employees and all this stuff that we just kind of put off, that actually do a lot of harm in your business on the back end, whether it's reputation or not getting back to customers. And this is all those voids that these VAs can help you with, like just like you said, setting up that appointment or confirming that your appointment's tomorrow or that you're going to be out there tomorrow. That is a huge one. Or getting, like you said, the follow up with an estimate. You present an estimate. Well, they can contact that customer and making sure that they understood the quote, or, if they have any questions on it, just those little things that we just tend to forget about, as especially kind of smaller, mid-sized landscape businesses. We just kind of let it go. That's the stuff that we can pay somebody else to do and not have to worry about it. That's a huge void that we need to take care of. So this is awesome.
I would say that one of the biggest, very mundane, but very, very important tasks that VAs handle for us is KPI tracking, right? To be a good manager, you set up all these KPIs. Maybe you want to set up performance-based pay, but that requires a lot of back-end work of, did they do what I asked them to do? Did they meet the metrics that I set up? Are we hitting the goals? And so, when Derek talked about how we were able to elevate our sales manager into a GM and not backfill, he is definitely still handling the people management side of the sales management role. But what he doesn't have to do is the legwork of gathering all of the data and checking all those KPIs and making sure that everything, every person hit their goals that they were assigned. What he gets is a very nice, neat package presented to him by the VA that shows everybody's metrics that she's already put together. She's checked everything for the week. She's presented everything that he's asked for. And then all he has to do is take a look at that and say, okay, I can talk to salesperson number one about how great they're doing in this category, but how they might be slipping in this category without having to do the legwork of gathering that data.
Yeah, that's amazing. The other aspect I know you touched on a little bit was just the financial savings from your end as a business owner. You mind just kind of going a little bit more detail on that?
Yeah, so, we didn't bring on virtual assistants with the intention of terminating anyone, just to be clear. When we brought them on, it was very much supposed to be assistance to our managers, and getting them extra help and allowing them to do more. Unfortunately, like Derek said, it can be somewhat disruptive. You'll find that you'll have maybe two different reactions to bringing in a virtual assistant. You'll have the key player who says, "This is awesome. I have somebody who can take care of anything I throw at them. Now I can go do the things that I find super important for my department," and they'll elevate themselves. You might also have some individuals who are like, "This is awesome. Someone's just taken over my job. Let me kick my feet up and just relax. This is great." And as much as you might enjoy working with that individual, at the end of the day, it is business, and that's probably not great for your business. And so we did have quite a few of those individuals as well. So we ended up able to trim some positions, I guess I would say, elevating some without backfilling. Others were just replaced with virtual assistants. We cut about, overall, if you take our net savings, it ended up being about $350,000 annually of what we were able to save on our administrative line, which for us, we're not the largest moving company ever. That was about 6 points on our P&L. So we took 6 points off of the administrative line and dropped them down to the bottom line. And that, to me, as the person who takes a look at that from that high level, was the biggest aha moment of just how amazing the virtual assistant team was in terms of assisting our business.
Just to kind of give another example, so we don't have an HR manager, which in moving, you definitely want, coverage in that realm, because we're dealing with crews and hiring, and, it's very operations heavy. So, but we do delegate that to a virtual assistant. So instead of paying a salary for an HR manager of 65, 75K, we're paying 20K, and it's getting done better. It is literally getting done better by maybe 4x from what we had. Not to say that everyone's HR manager isn't great, but I mean, that's the potential savings we're talking about just in one area of your business.
And just to be clear, he's not just doing HR. He's actually he is our VA manager as well. So he manages the entire VA team. And he's also our spreadsheets dashboard expert. So whenever we need anything built out in terms of the KPI tracking, like I talked about, he builds all of that out from scratch, along with many, many, many other things. So not only did he take over the HR side of things, he also took over quite a bit more than that, for obviously significant savings. It's just amazing.
We want to take a quick second to tell you about our friends over at Cycle CPA. I can't even express to you how important it is to have a good accountant on your side. You know you want accurate bookkeeping and financial statements every month. Instead, you're often left with limited time to focus on the accounting side of your business and no reports to show for it. At Cycle CPA, the landscaping accountants, they not only handle the bookkeeping, but also provide landscape industry benchmarking, job costing, financials by service line, advisory meetings, and much more. Cycle CPA has a team of landscaping accountants available to provide anything from bookkeeping to CFO services. Visit cyclecpa.com, and for $100 off, mention the $1 Million Landscaper podcast.
Want to grow your business and get more customers fast? Then it's time to talk about pay-per-click advertising from Green Frog Web Design. With PPC, your business can appear right at the top of the search results, putting you in front of the customers who are already looking for your services. Whether it's landscaping, home improvement, or retail, Green Frog's expert team will create targeted, high-performing ad campaigns that deliver real results. No wasting money, no guessing games, just more leads and more sales. And the best part, Green Frog handles everything for you, from keyword research to ad design to optimization, so you can focus on what you do best, running your business. If you're ready to leap ahead of your competition, visit greenfrogwebdesign.com today or just click the link in the bio. Start driving traffic, generating leads, and growing your business like never before.
That's awesome. And I love those examples. When I was talking to somebody recently about hiring a VA for their landscape business, they're, going back and forth. So they hire somebody local to them, and have somebody come in just part-time. And I was like, okay, just kind of curious, what would you be paying this person? And they're like, $30,000 to $40,000 is something part-time. Okay. I'm like, well, you have this other stuff. You can go into the VAs and it's going to be dramatically cheaper. It'll be a lot easier for you just to kind of manage them and deal with that than having somebody call off sick or, everybody gets sick. I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but like, it's just much easier to do that. And it's a lot cheaper, I should say. And they never really thought about that way until I kind of pointed out just the cost savings. Like, oh, that would be nice. I'm like, well, so it's something to seriously consider. I guess the other thing I kind of want to touch on, you talked about earlier, was ensuring that the VA is actually doing what they're supposed to be doing. And I can personally attest to this because I did have an issue with one of our VAs for our bookkeeping. They claim to be doing all this stuff, like 10, 12 hours doing our books here for a $1 million landscaper. And we're not a big company. Like, this should not take you this long. I was actually able to go in and see from a computer screenshots that software that I used took of it. And I actually kind of pointed out and is actually able to address that problem. Is that something you guys deal with HALU and kind of just go on that a little bit more?
Yeah. So I think that the big difference between what we do and what other agencies do is we're not just on the talent acquisition side. Finding a VA, like I said earlier in the podcast, is not necessarily the hardest part. Finding high quality talent is difficult, but it is the management side. And so we do use software, like you'd mentioned, to track performance. And we take an active role in managing the talent for you. So from the onboarding and training all the way through their career at your business, our job is to make sure that they are fully integrated within your company and they're fully optimized with their time. And so we pay attention to activity and idle time, and you're assigned an account manager who's responsible for maintaining that relationship, because we're talking about, company culture on our side and on the talent side to make sure that they're happy and that way that they're performing and they're full-time. And this is a career for them. And they want to feel, that's what's really, I think, the miss with hiring remote staff or hiring VAs is that, a lot of times companies don't get the full potential because they haven't fully integrated them within the company and made them a part of the company. And we help every step of the way. And we continue to manage that to make sure that there's opportunity for the talent side. And it's a long-term relationship. And an example of that would be, raises. We're the only agency that gives those raises as a pass-through completely 100% to the VA. So if a client was like, hey, this individual has been doing great for us, they've been with us for 6 months or a year, I want to give them a raise. We don't take a cut of that, which we found that other agencies were doing. And what that allows us to do is create a career opportunity with upward mobility for that outsourced talent. And that really attracts top talent, and it also retains that talent. So part of the management is the culture side and having those systems and processes in place. So once we do place that talent, they perform well. Then there's the software side, which we leverage as well. We have KPIs and things like that we run, our account manager will run. And then we do frequent check-ins with the client. But it's an interesting, thing. We actually catch problems before the client does. So when you were asking the question, like, why is it taking so long to get this stuff done? And, is this individual doing what I've asked them to do? We actually will catch that before the client, and then we'll address it right away. So yeah, that's part of the service that we provide. and that's kind of what makes us who we are, is the management aspect of the VA and the consulting.
Yeah, that's huge. And that, to me, that's what sets you guys apart from like even how I went about getting VAs. I wish I would have known about you guys a long time ago, because I would have gone through you guys just to deal with that and manage it and learn how to set up the systems and procedures, ensuring they do. I kind of just did it through trial by fire and just figuring out, oh, I need to do this, this, this. And that's one thing I love what you guys do. I guess kind of go a little bit more about HeyLou, and how, if somebody's interested in getting a VA, what's the process and how do you go about doing that?
Yeah, so excuse me, if somebody's interested in getting a VA, they can fill out a form on our website, and that will lead them into booking a discovery call. So really what we want to do is sit down with decision makers, business owners, whoever it is looking to hire a virtual assistant, and dig into what is going to be the thing that you need the most and how can we help you the best. And then we'll take that information, and from that, you have this really beautiful job description, essentially. And that's where we take that job description or multiple, and we hand that off to our recruiters and say, this is the type of individual we're looking for. Let's start finding people that we can present. We do have somewhat of a roster of people that have already been pre-screened for things like general administrative assistants. It's a pretty broad category of a lot of people who are looking for that. So we already have people who have been interviewed and they're good to go, ready to go for those types of roles. But we can also do a lot more niche categories. You mentioned video editing was something that you had, or podcast editing. That is something that obviously is a very specific skill. So we can go out and we can search for that. Same thing, you mentioned social media. That's another thing. We can go out and search for that type of role once we have that job description from that discovery call. Then from there, we'll present the candidates per role that you're looking for. 2 to 5 candidates is what we try to present to every person who's looking for a VA. We present an introductory video so you can hear them, hear how they sound. You can see some of their personality kind of shine through on their intro video as well. And then we also provide their resume along with that. Then you, as a client, get to decide who out of the batch that we send you would like to interview. You're welcome to interview all of them, or you can just interview a couple of them. If some of them maybe didn't stand out to you, that's totally fine. But what we try to stay away from is you have an ask and we just throw any assistant into that role and say, here's your fit. We hope it goes well. Because like Derek said, we want them to be integrated into your company and into the role as extensively as possible, because that's where we see the most successful client VA relationships. And that's really going to happen when you as a client get to pick who becomes part of your team. It's very important for, just the combination of them like into your business, and you have to work with them and your team has to work with them. We have had several clients who actually have put virtual assistants through multiple interviews where they're talking to the different team members that they're going to be working with, because it's going to be 40 hours a week relationship that they have. And so they want to make sure that it sticks and that it goes really well. Then from there, after the interviews, you can pick who you want to work with. And then you'll also have an account manager who's assigned to you, and they're going to be there every step of the way for onboarding, making sure that you've got your communication platform set up correctly. And that way you guys can communicate very seamlessly with your virtual assistant. You can do that all entirely on your own platforms. We don't require any of our platforms for that. That's whatever you want. But if you're kind of struggling with, what should I use for this? How do I communicate with them? What's the best method for this? We can also help with that, provide some suggestions for you in terms of maybe software or how best to integrate them into your team. And then we'll start knocking off the task list that we talked about during discovery and start getting them up to speed on all of the things that you need help with.
Yeah, that is amazing. Just to have somebody give you that guidance, especially if you've never dealt with this before, will definitely set you up for success getting these VAs. So that's awesome to me. Again, this is what separates you guys from just going through other VA agencies. So is there any advice that you would give a landscaper, has never worked with the VA and is, now hearing this podcast and thinking this is a possibility? Any advice you would give them?
I would say, I would say do it as quickly as possible because really, I mean, we don't have, there's no fee to get started. So it's very little risk. There's no contract length where we're locking you into a year, or 6 months or anything. If it doesn't work and you don't think that this is a good fit, then you can walk away at any time. So really the risk is not doing it. And with the guidance that we provide, I mean, it is a game changer. So my advice would be, to give it a shot, and and our job is to make sure that it goes well, and consult you on how to optimize and leverage this as a tool for your business growth. So, I think the other advice that I would give is just, where business is evolving, in the modern day. And so I know in a lot of service industries, some businesses have evolved pretty quickly and have adapted. We've worked with businesses that, maybe aren't, super high tech yet. So we also, like Kelly was saying, will help you set up internal communications and, give suggestions on that. So it's really kind of, it's a cool thing that we're able to provide. And, Kelly and I own a business. And so it's something that we enjoy talking about. We want to solve problems for you. So, that would be my advice. Do you have any advice that you'd give?
Yeah. Well, just to kind of carry on what you were saying, what's kind of funny is that discovery calls are supposed to be about 30 minutes. And because we also own a service industry business, we end up spending so much time just talking about, oh, what about this process? And what do you have set up for this? And is that working for you? And we really draw them out longer than we should. So I need to work on that. But once you get talking about your business, it's kind of hard to stop sometimes. So that's kind of how our discoveries go. But in terms of advice, I would say, if you're struggling on, I feel like this is interesting, but I'm not sure how I would use a VA, and I really don't know how to plug them into my team or how they would accept that. There's two different exercises that you can do to kind of land at that answer. And one of them is what Derek mentioned, where you break down the tasks per key player, and then you just split those tasks. You split them into two columns. One column is the things that only that key player should be doing. Nobody else should touch that. It should really just be them. And the other list is they could probably hand that off to someone else and it would be totally fine. And this list over here of those delegation possible tasks becomes your job description for your VA. The other one is just ask the people in your company, hey, if I gave you an assistant, would you like it? And what would you do? And that will also, most people will not turn that down. There's very few people who will say, oh, I'm good. I don't want an assistant. Thank you. People will jump at that opportunity, especially in smaller companies as well. They're usually wearing a ton of hats and very bogged down by the day-to-day and just trying to make everything happen. If you gave them the option for that sort of relief, I think they would jump at that. So that's another great way to kind of see how you could potentially plug virtual assistants in. And then, like Derek said, we were very hesitant. We took too long to actually adopt this practice and then adapt to it. And I think that's also where we're trying to be as helpful as possible so that you don't have to do what you said with the trial by fire. We've already gone through it. We already did that. We spent quite a long time going through that. Actually, it wasn't the most fun thing in the world, but because of that, we have a very clear roadmap that we can help you with and really help dissect where are the best places to plug a virtual assistant in. And, how can I get some of my money back? How can I get some of my time back? How can I help my team members, have a better working environment because they're not so stressed out about everything all the time? There's a lot of different benefits that come with this. And I think all of them make it so worth it.
I think one other aspect too is there's tasks that you're doing currently, and there's tasks that you can't afford to do because you don't have the revenue to justify another stateside role, right? Like if you could do more business development, you probably would, but you only have so much time because you're wearing so many hats and you're spread thin. So the other exercise that we go through is like, what are some tasks that could make an impact on your business that you're not currently doing? Lead generation, social media outreach, engaging with different profiles or personas that you're trying to, target. That takes a lot of time, to go and follow the profile and then engage and leave a comment on there, and then reach out with maybe some sort of an offer. Or, hey, like any of your clients or anyone you refer to us, will give you 10% off of whatever, some sort of strategic offer. A lot of people don't have time. When you're a CEO, you're wearing all those hats. This is an opportunity to take on some of those tasks that you've never been able to do, or your revenue doesn't justify doing, and do them now. So
I agree with that 100%. We recently just did a podcast about communication, and there's so many different platforms to communicate with the customer on the social media, email, texting, all that stuff, and try to organize that into like one location, or just to be able to address all those things. If somebody, a potential customer leaves a Facebook post or a comment, I should say, you may miss that because you're not following that, because you don't have time as a business owner. You're like, that's too menial task. But that could be a customer that could be worth who knows, tens of thousands of dollars, whatever it is. But you might miss that because you don't have the time and bandwidth to deal with that. And that's where one of the things a VA could deal with. And it's just, they're really invaluable if you really look at it and start honestly stepping back from your business, taking a look overall at your business and seeing those holes that you are missing because of this. And those are some of the things that the VA can do. The other thing too, I got thinking about, I jotted down some notes, was, with all this stuff with AI coming out, and AI can automate a lot of things. One key difference, though, I think is something you guys mentioned, was your VA was able to see some of those holes that were missing with whatever the procedures or anything. AI is not going to find that. That comes from a human interaction. So if you think your answer is going to be using AI, that may not be the case. Or a VA can actually go in and really see, oh, hey, we need to fix this, or we're missing this, or whatever it is. So just think about that kind of thing. And that's where that human touch comes in way beyond AI. I mean, I'm all for using AI where you can, but
yeah,
there's certain things that AI can't do at this point.
Well, that's really interesting that you mentioned that, because an AI enabled VA is like the optimal tool, right? So you have a VA who has access to Claude, has access to ChatGPT. That is a power user that's going to add more value. And so, they say AI isn't going to take jobs, but someone who knows AI will. And that is, a VA enabled by AI. So if you can have 5 or 6 of those in your business, or, at a fraction of the cost that you would hire somebody here, in the States, you'd want to take advantage of that. So
I feel like we're in a day and age where every problem, the solution is going to be somewhere, either software or a virtual assistant, in my opinion. And software can be extremely powerful, but at the same time, like you mentioned, there are certain things that they really need human touch, human interaction, human oversight. I mean, if you talk to people about their experience with automated chatbots, most of it is negative. They don't like it. The first thing that they're going to type into the chatbot, because I do this, is representative, because you don't want to talk to the bot. You're like, screw your bot. I would like to talk to a human who can understand what I'm saying and feel my frustration maybe, and empathize with me, and get me a solution to my problem. And these are all things that virtual assistants can do, I would say, better than the software can. And so, and then there's the AI aspect as well, where most of them come in with a knowledge of how best to use those AI platforms as well, to support them in their roles while they support you. So it just becomes something that's extra powerful.
I did take 2 other notes. One was, first off, how do you go about paying? I know it's kind of slightly off what we just talked about here, but pay, how does that go? Do you pay HeyLou, and then how does all that kind of structure work?
Yep. So if you're wanting to get a VA plugged in from HeyLou, it's very, very simple. You would just pay HeyLou on a weekly basis, and you don't have to worry about anything else. We handle everything else for you. So this is where that managed service kind of comes in. We're handling the time tracking, the activity monitoring, the payroll, all of the things, the compliance that has to happen on the virtual assistant side of things. And all you have to worry about is paying us. And for the most part, it's also a set it and forget it, which for me as a business owner, I'm a huge fan of set it and forget it. I hate when people have to send me an invoice and then I have to go put in my information again, because chances are I'm going to miss it. And then my VA is going to take care of it for me, honestly. But it's very, very simple. It's automatic. It's recurring. You don't have to worry about it at all. We're handling everything. Obviously, if something were to come up where you said, hey, I paid for 40 hours last week, but I'm not sure that I got 40 hours. For one, our account managers are already on top of that. They are monitoring that every single day for every single virtual assistant for every account that they're managing. So that takes up the majority of their time, is making sure that there's that quality service and that optimization. But if it is something where you as a client are concerned, raise the red flag, and your account manager is going to go in and dig into it for you and make sure that your worries are taken care of, and that we are ensuring that they were actually working during the time that they clocked. So
Nice.
I got a question actually for you. What is the advantage of the H1 work or H1B visa program? Is that what it is? H1B?
Yeah.
Yeah. What is the advantage of that for landscaping?
Well, a lot of landscapers will take advantage of it just to get physical labor. I mean, there is a portion that could, I think it's called H1A. I believe it's correct, if I'm correct on that, that we can bring in for admin side. But typically H1B is for like in the field type workers. So, person out lawn mowing or landscaping. So, but there is again, I think it's H1A that you can bring in admin staff to kind of do that. And that's typically a seasonal type of worker that comes in, springtime, goes back or does whatever in the fall time, typically is what they bring.
So I guess the point I would be making here would be it's very much the advantage of that, except for you're not paying the pricing that you would pay in the United States. You're taking advantage of the exchange rate, and the dollar is really powerful. And countries like the Philippines, Indonesia, we have an advantage there. So you get this. It's the same concept, except for you're able to take advantage of that, that savings.
And the one thing with like using those programs, it's very expensive because you got to hire usually some kind of a legal professional to go in there and set it all up. So you might be paying $10,000. I have a client that spent like $13,000 to do it, and they didn't even get anybody. It was an issue, and there was other things. So that's a huge upfront cost. Like you said, there's no initial cost for you guys to kind of do that and bring somebody in. So, and then just kind of go in just typically paying. So that's a huge thing right there.
Along the lines of that, in the landscaping world, if a lot of people are taking advantage of the H1B, I believe most of the time those workers are sourced from Latin America, and a lot of times maybe don't necessarily speak English. I know we had that with moving, where we were part of a program like that, and the guys didn't speak English at all. Thankfully, one of our operations managers is already bilingual, so it was a very seamless transition for him to be able to manage them, and that wasn't an issue. But we have spoken with some companies that have had a very hard time with that, where they're speaking into Google Translate and then trying to make that work. But that is also one thing that we've helped businesses with on the Halo side, is placing a bilingual virtual assistant on the operational side to help with that communication. So we've had people bring in, dispatchers, for example, that are bilingual, so they can seamlessly communicate with all the H-1B workers, get them plugged into their schedules, get everything figured out on the HR onboarding side of things. We've also had people bring in virtual assistants to help them translate all of their training material into Spanish for them. And obviously you can use translation services, but there's different dialects, and there are things that through Google Translate just don't come across the right way. And so this is where they were able to utilize the power of a bilingual virtual assistant from Latin America, who is helping them with some of their process build outs and just communication in general. And it can also be great if your business is in a location where a lot of your clientele speaks Spanish. So I know this is a big ask in places like Florida, for example, where a lot of their clients are calling in and they don't speak English either. They're able to actually route them over to their bilingual virtual assistant to help out with everything client-side communication for that as well.
I guess too, on that, the VAs that you typically bring on, they speak English. Is that
Oh
typically?
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's the first prerequisite for them to be hired on.
Okay.
They
Yeah.
have to be able to speak English fluently. It cannot be English speaking, with the use of a tool like Google Translate, for example. They should be able to have a fluent conversation with all of the clients back and forth very seamlessly. Yeah.
Nice. Now, what about the time zone factor? If it's from the Philippines, it's usually quite a bit of difference time zone. How does that work? Like for answering phones or anything like that?
So yeah, we source from all over the globe, but with the Philippines, they're in a different time zone. Latin America is same time zone, so we also source from Latin America. We have a pipeline of recruiting there as well. But with the Philippines, it's an opportunity to work for an American company. That is like a huge opportunity for them. So we have had no problem at all finding individuals who are willing to work the night shift.
Mhm.
So that is like Kelly said, a prerequisite for working at Halu. That's very upfront, and they do not have a problem with it at all.
I think it's clear already from even when they apply for the job that more than likely they're going to be working for a company that would like a 9 to 5 local time for the shift. But there's also a benefit, I would say, to the time difference, and that is that because they're already coming in with the expectation of changing when they're working, it becomes very flexible if you, as a US employer, are looking for something like a second shift coverage. We had that issue where we needed some really, really early coverage at about 6 o'clock in the morning to start with like that dispatch assistance. But then we also needed some coverage later in the evenings as we're doing the communication for next day and communicating with crews and also communicating with customers all the way up until about 9 p.m. And if you were to ask somebody, here in the States, I want you to work from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m., first of all, they're going to give you a hard no. But even finding people who are willing to work as early as 6 a.m. or who are willing to work as late as 9 p.m. on two different shifts can be kind of difficult. Everybody's kind of used to this 9 to 5 work schedule. But for our situation, two of our VAs kind of saw the problem, raised their hands and said, one of them, I'm willing to work as early as that 6 a.m. shift. I have no problem with that. That doesn't bother me at all. So I'll take that early shift. And the other one said, I'm totally fine to work the later shift. So we got more coverage having virtual assistants who are in a different time zone than we would have had those individuals been US based.
My wife's one friend, she actually went to Philippines for some business, excuse me, and she said that it's actually kind of like there are people that's all they do is just work all night and then they sleep during the day. They just reverse their schedule to fit our schedule. I thought that was kind of interesting that a lot did that. And they said like coffee shops are open in the middle of the night just so they can go do whatever. They're that's just kind of what they do. I shouldn't say what they do, but that's part of what they do over there. They kind of do a lot of stuff, and it's across the world. I never realized this until I started diving into VAs. They do this across the world. The globe is taking advantage of VAs, and to me, that's something that we need to start taking advantage of, especially as landscapers and landscape business owners.
Yeah,
You guys,
yeah. I think Ramon, every time we talk to him, he's in some coffee shop working. He lives on, he's different though. I mean, we've talked about him being a gem and a unicorn, but he works like 24 hours a day.
I think he drinks like 8 cups of coffee.
Yeah, it's insane.
Like you're gonna get kidney stones or something.
It's pretty bad.
I guess, is there any, I wouldn't say downsides, any issues that you could see with hiring a VA from another country? Or like, I know for the Philippines, for me, I've had some issues where they had hurricanes going through, the natural disaster. And to me, that's just like, that's life. You can't, that could happen here. But there's anything else that you can see as a downfall or any issues?
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. There are, I would say just like any remote staff, you're going to have, it's very similar to hiring somebody here in the United States when it comes to like onboarding and managing and integrating. So I would say the relationships that don't go well are the ones that are not able to communicate with their VA effectively. And we do obviously help with that. But if you don't have, like, there are typically smaller businesses don't have SOPs and process documentation and things like that. So if you're like a really small company, we can work with you, but we're probably going to have to be a little bit more hands-on. But when it comes to like the reliability of like internet and things like that, we haven't had any issues other than if there is a storm, because there's typhoons that go through. We actually source the majority of our talent from a particular part of the Philippines that isn't affected as much as regions that we've identified that might have that issue. But it's rare, and we usually will let you know in advance, like, hey, there may be a period of time, a few hours or maybe a day where they're not available. Obviously, we're not charging for time that isn't worked. So you're not getting charged for that. But
this is also the benefit of having HeyLou help you manage, is that even if you have a wonderful communication platform, let's say you're using Slack and you're working on Slack with your virtual assistant, but the internet gets knocked out because of a typhoon, for example. Now you're on Slack and you can't communicate with them and they're offline, and you might feel like you've just been ghosted, right? Because we've all had that happen at some point with even US employees. You can't get a hold of them anymore. What's really nice is that HeyLou has employees that also live in the Philippines. And so while the internet might be out, their cell communication is still good. And so we have other team members who are there communicating back to us saying, hey, I'm on the phone with this person. This is what happened. They're expected to get everything back up and running by X time, so that we and your account manager can then come back to you and still communicate with you as a client and say, hey, this is what's going on. And that way you don't have that gut wrenching feeling of you just spent all this time working with a team member and now they're gone and you have no idea what's going on. We try to keep everybody very well informed.
That's nice. That is very nice. Like I said, I only had, I think it's maybe one or two times where I had an issue with, it was weather related, but the VA reached out to me prior to anything and said that, hey, we have a storm going through. I'm not sure what's going to happen. Just if something comes up, I don't hear from you, or you don't hear from me, I should say, here's what's going on. And then literally it was like a day later, they said they're in a coffee shop dealing with whatever, working through it, and they'll deal with it. So to me, they're very dedicated to us, and they want to help us. They want to, do good for us. So just keep that in mind. Don't worry that they're there to steal your money or anything like that. They actually, their work ethic is very impressive.
Yeah, the opportunity is huge, and I mean that's why our model, it's full-time work. If you are placing somebody part-time, what we tend to see is what's called moonlighting, because these are individuals who have expenses and they've got to pay to take care of their families, and they want opportunity. And if we can provide a full-time opportunity with upward mobility and maintain that relationship, then it's going to go fantastic. And so there's that two-sided, two sides of the coin where, we're managing the client side and the VA side to make sure that marriage goes really well for a long period of time. So we typically don't see, any turnover where clients are canceling services. We actually see the opposite, where we see clients who want their second, third VA. Sometimes they want to start with more than one VA, and we tend to try to identify if they have the bandwidth to onboard more than one employee, which typically is a no, and we kind of steer them away from that. But yeah, we have clients who start off with one and end up with 6, VAs. So yeah.
It's definitely helpful. Once you start getting, I was like, holy cow, like you said, I should have done this sooner.
Well, I think you start with like what we talked about, where it's the tasks you need, and then you start to get into your wish list tasks. And that's where it becomes really fun, I would say, as a business owner, to say, look at this huge list of things I've always wanted to be able to do, and now I'm actually doing them. And then you can see the impact of that on your business that you may have otherwise not been able to see, which is really cool. From the work ethic standpoint, I'll just throw this out there. Our VA manager on the moving side of things has already been working 10 hours a day at his own request, and just put in a request a couple days ago to ask if he could work 12 to 13 hours a day. Wow. Instead. So that's another side of it that you don't typically see when you hire someone. And I was just kind of cracking up because he was like, could I work more? I'm like, sure, let's talk about what you're going to be doing. But definitely a different type of culture there as well. And it's really cool to see stark difference to some of the people I've hired remotely in the US before, where, we go and we check their phone line and their entire job is supposed to be on the phones, and they have answered all of 0 phone calls for the week. So definitely a big difference there.
Yeah. Well, Derek and Kelly, I appreciate you guys being on here today. If somebody's interested in getting a VA and just even want to talk to you guys about the potentials of what a VA can do for them, how they get hold of you?
Yeah, so the website would be the best way, and filling out that form. And then what we do is set up a discovery call for that. So we'll give you a link to kind of post in your bio, and to share. And yeah, we'd love to get that discovery call set up and kind of learn more about, your business.
Thank you, guys. Now, guys, landscapers out there, if you've been contemplating it, I really, really encourage you to reach out to Derek and Kelly here, because it is something that can definitely help add value to your business, but help make your business stand apart from those other companies that aren't answering the phones, that aren't responding back to the customers. All those little things, again, that we just kind of push off because we don't have time. We're dealing with the major issues going on. Well, these little things make a big difference and really make your business stand apart. So to reach out to Derek and Kelly over at HALU and see what they can do for you, you'll be amazed. And once you start doing it, like you said, you're going to fall in love with it. I guarantee it. So thank you, guys. Appreciate you guys being on the show, and look forward to having you guys on in the future.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.